Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome or welcome back. My name is Dalibor Petrovic. I'm the founder of the Summit Leadership Alliance and your host to these TechTonic Conversations, a series that is produced and delivered to you with guests who share interesting, timely, relevant, actionable stories and perspectives on tech leadership and enterprise technology and technology trends. Today, on this wonderful Wednesday, April the 15th, we are going to have a conversation about Deloitte's Tech Trends 2025, namely the sixth trend in the series of trends that we unpacked this season from the Deloitte's latest Tech Trends report. And joining me in this conversation is a very, very impressive panel. I am thrilled to welcome first Laurie Olson. Laurie is a technology fellow at Deloitte. Laurie, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. As you mentioned, I'm a tech fellow for Deloitte, and I love working on technology and big systems.
Love to hear your perspectives on this important topic. Next,
Yeah.
joining us is David Mayer. David is the Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer for Graybar. David, thank you very much for your time and welcome.
Thanks, Dalibor. Happy to participate and looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Next on the panel is Abdi Godarzi. Abdi is the head of Gen AI product, innovation, and new business models at Deloitte. Abdi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I think it's going to be a great conversation and looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And last, but certainly not least, Kelly Raskovich, our executive editor of Deloitte Tech Trends. Kelly, thank you very much for joining us. Kelly, maybe now that you join us last in this introduction, maybe I'll pass the baton over to you, and you can
Let's do it.
give us a little bit. Maybe we can start a little bit about who you are, and then you can share with us some context about tech trends.
Of course. Well, by way of quick introduction, my name is Kelly Raskovich, and I'm a leader within our office of the CTO, and I serve as executive editor of Tech Trends. It is a report we produce every year, all around what's new and next in tech. Having been at the firm for the past 14 years, this is something I've lived and breathed myself. I spent the first 8 years at the firm doing ERP projects. So this one, specifically, this trend is one of my favorites because I think it's important. It also gets a bad rep in terms of why do we have something that's inherently rusty but trusty featured as part of tech trends. So I think really shining a light on that is something I love to do because you have to have your core systems playing nice with those new white hot innovations in order to kind of make this a reality of where you want the future to go. But I spend a lot of my day thinking about what's new and next in tech and helping Deloitte and our clients think through that, right? So projecting what's coming 18 to 24 months out and sharing it in a way that's digestible for folks is really important because I think in today's day and age, there is so much out there. I don't know about you all, but whether it's podcasts, TikTok, Instagram, you name it, the ability to consume data has never been greater. But I think that also comes with that nuance of what do all these things mean and what's really something that I have to focus on, either personally or professionally. So really excited to be here today with you all. Dalibor, I know this has been a series near and dear to our heart with you for the past 3 years that we've been at this with you. This, as Dalibor, you mentioned, is the 7th session in this series. So we've gone and done an overview of all these 6 trends with our chief futurist, Mike Bechtel, who's one of our exec editors and authors of the piece. And then we've done a deep dive into each of the 6 trends. This is that last trend. So this is the 7th part of our webinar series. All of those other sessions can be viewed on playback as part of this series. So if you want to learn more about anyone in particular, feel free to dive into that. Another joke that we have is Tech Trends is old enough to drive. So we've been doing this for 16 years. even though we've been doing this series with Dalibor for the past 3, this has definitely been something that we've learned what to do and what not to do. And part of what we do throughout the entire year is interview our clients, startups, even people we're not working with, to try and get a pulse of what's coming and what are things that they're working on today that might be pioneering for others, right? Because we often say that the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed. So shining a light on where organizations are already doing this and doing it in a way that's global and cross industry, because what you can learn from a consumer client could easily be applied to an oil and gas client if you think about it. So really thinking through, how do you challenge yourself to think about things differently and in a meaningful way? So we certainly try and share kind of what's now, new, and next with every trend, but you'll see as part of it, we often include client stories because those are really how it comes to life. And so having folks like David join us is really important because he can actually walk the walk and talk the talk along with us. So that is something I certainly love, and we will dive into that here in a bit. But for those of you who might be new to the series, I'll just give a quick intro to how we organize ourselves. So our trends are framed in our macro technology forces framework. And so we have 6 trends every year. What's included in the trends changes kind of based on where we're seeing this evolve, but we anchor ourselves into what we call our elevating forces. So these are our top 3 forces, and these are where we think of as our source of innovation. If you were a startup, you might be able to just focus on these 3 and be good. But a lot of the companies that you all work with and for have a legacy to protect and have a lot of things that they need to do from a grounding force perspective to be able to do those things at the top. So the grounding forces are those ones that you have to do to get right in order to do those ones at the top. One of my colleagues likes to say that our elevating forces are that sexy sports car that you want to drive. And the grounding forces are that minivan, right? That'll reliably get you there. And you've got to be able to drive the van just like you could that sports car. So that's certainly an analogy I love. And we'll focus our time on this last one, which is all around core modernization. And so this trend specifically is all around how AI changes everything for the core. And like I said earlier, we often get asked, why do we have this rusty but trusty bucket? And this story is a big one because companies are always having to modernize their core in some way, shape, or form, right? There's legacy systems in place. And so really thinking through, what does that journey look like, right? Everyone has tech debt. And even in last year's Tech Trends report, we actually highlighted that notion of flipping the script from tech debt to tech wellness, right? So how can we have this be more a part of the conversation versus that once a year discussion where you stroke a big check and move on? Really thinking through, how do we tackle this? How do we make it less of a headache? And what we're finding is, thanks to low code, no code tech, in large part driven by the advancements in AI, we're seeing that you can use natural language to employ agents to look around and bop around the systems to see what actually needs to be updated, right? So shifting from that headache we often want to ignore and really making something that we can meaningfully get our arms around is how we're seeing this trend to evolve. And it's really something that I'm excited to dive in with our speakers here in a bit, because ERP projects are often known to be very long and very expensive. And sometimes they fail to deliver on the expected business outcomes, right? And so with the emergence of AI, we're actually seeing that start to open the doors of integration, as you can do things faster. You can also have things connected to more than just your core, right? And we're also seeing that global ERP market expand. I think in our report, we quote that it's growing at a rate of 11% from 2023 to 2030. And that is in large part driven by that need for greater efficiency, and then also more of like that data-driven decision making. So I'm really excited to see how this will continue to evolve, especially because I think AI is really seen as that unlock for how we do it. And so we'll certainly dive into that now, especially with David being from Graybar. He'll kind of talk you through that in a little bit. But we also have agents are coming into the picture too, right? So thinking through, how can, not only from an AI perspective, but from a Gen AI and agentic AI perspective, things actually going from just analysis to actually executing more of the core functions. Right? Today, we have bots that review data and make recommendations, but in the future, there's a world in which agents can actually go and execute that. One of the examples we give is ServiceNow providing some ways to actually like augment and find ways to get people from an onboarding perspective access to systems right away, right? So people in HR don't have to go and request all of these. They have agents actually executing on this from the jump. So we will talk all about core modernization over the next 50 minutes, but you'll notice there's other key themes that are going to pop up as part of this, right? I think we'll talk about things like AI agents specifically, but then we're also going to talk about other things like what does this mean from a delivering value perspective or the importance of storytelling? Even as we talked about with our speakers before we kicked off, right? What does this mean for talent and culture? How do we think about this journey that we're on? And really thinking about it from a journey perspective as opposed to a destination perspective. So I love that we're really at the cusp of this from an AI-driven revolution. And I personally am really excited to see how this all unfolds. But enough about me. I will stop sharing so we can get the spotlight on our beautiful speakers. And Abdi, I would love to hear from you. One, introduce yourself a little bit more, but then two, maybe share a little bit about what's happening at Deloitte. How are we seeing this show up at our clients? I mean, you have a wonderful title, but even taking a step back to thinking about how are we doing this from a Gen AI perspective, innovation perspective, or even standing up new businesses?
Thanks, Kelly. Titles are important to initiate the conversations, but it's really the experience that matters. So a little bit of background about myself. I've been at Deloitte for a long, long time, but longer than Deloitte, I've been focusing on, basically core systems, financials, supply chain, the systems and applications that actually help you run the business. Many, many years advising clients and implementing these kind of solutions in various ERP platforms from SAP to Oracle and others. That's where I've been spending my time with many clients in the Fortune 500 and more, thinking about how do I actually build a core. And it's important for us to understand what the core is first before we talk about what the intelligent core looks like or what the arrival of AI really means to it. So core is about being a system of record or creating a system of record that runs the business. I've never heard the analogy that I'm driving van, but I'm a happy van driver because at the end of the day, it's running the business that really enables everything else around it. And this is why I think core systems are very important. And as I said, for the past 2+ decades, many organizations have been focusing on creating consolidated cores, meaning bring systems together, integrate them together, create more standards, create simpler systems of records. But now they have got to a point that all those activities and all those implementations are now empowered by AI that can actually help them reimagine things or do things that they could not do before. And it's important for us to take a step back and say, okay, that's great. It was actually first AI and automation, which honestly did not take off as much as we felt it's going to take off. But then generative AI gave it a big boost, and now agentic AI is giving it even bigger boost in terms of promoting efficiencies and productivities and improvements in the way we consume the systems or even how we implement them. So the trend from technology perspective is moving really fast and moving the right direction. Then it becomes the question of how do you take advantage of all these technologies to do the things that been doing for a long, long time easier and get more value and outcome out of it than ever before. And the first step is, like the best place for advantages, which I know David's going to talk about, is to build intelligent core or build a proper or a really foundational core. You need standards and you need to go through an implementation lifecycle that allows you to kind of set those records and standards in place. you can absolutely declare that the use of agentic and Gen AI capabilities to accelerate the implementation of the core is now a core reality. It is a reality that is in place. It's in place with many of our clients, and the results are actually very promising, and it's real. Implementations are taking lesser time, activities are taking lesser time, and we have started to see the results in a way that we can trust them. And to me, trust is very important because at the end of the day, why do you build the core? To run the business. The core has to be trusted. It has to be able to do the things business expects it to do, and people need to believe that the core is capable of running the business. And businesses are growing, and the ability to grow with the business is a very important aspect of designing and architecting a core. And now I believe the technology has reached the point that we can bring those technologies and capabilities right to the systems, right to the enterprise, and take advantage of them in full. So I'm excited about this conversation, and let's go around with other panel members and get their perspectives as well.
Love it. Well, David, I know you have been on this journey at Graybar, so would love to hear from you where you're at in that core modernization journey. What are some things you've learned? What's working, what's not? But open the floor to you too, because we'd love to hear more from you on that.
Yeah, sure. So just to give you a little background on me before I jump in and talk about where we're at in our journey. As Dalibor and Kelly said, my name's Dave Meyer. I'm the CFO at Graybar. I've been here for about 10 years, the last 3 of which have been in the CFO seat. Prior to that, I actually was the CIO for several years before moving into the CFO job. So I'm very familiar with the journey, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the things we've done several years ago to prepare us for where we're at now as well. As far as Graybar, I'm sure many of you aren't familiar with Graybar, but we're a leading North American distributor, wholesale distributor of electrical, comm data, and automation products. We sell pretty much anything in those product categories that go into large-scale commercial construction. So think office buildings, factories, data centers are obviously big for us right now, especially because the topic we're talking about here. It has been a huge business uplift for us the last couple of years since they seem to be going up everywhere. And then just to give you a size of kind of scale of Graybar, we're about $12 billion in revenue and about 9,000 employees. And we've been in business for over 150 years, the last 95 of which we've been employee owned and remain independent. So as far as our journey, we're currently in the midst of a large scale transformation that we started about 18 months, 2 years ago. I would say our journey started a little bit before that. We initially put in SAP back in the early 2000s. So we've been on SAP for about 20 years. As you can imagine, we've highly customized that solution over 20 years, and we've had data sprawl and a lack of governance around master data and those sorts of things. So we really got to the point where it was time to refresh. And I think what accelerated that was the discussion around AI and automation. We dabbled, obviously, a little bit with RPA and some of those tools. We kind of refreshed the application stack outside of SAP with a couple best of breed solutions and moved them to the cloud or a SaaS type of setup. But then we got to the core and our ambitions around really going after automation in a much broader scale. And it became clear to us that we could not do that without refreshing the core. And when I say refreshing the core, it's not just SAP. There's a handful of other ancillary systems that we still needed to upgrade as part of that process. And then it's really about that data layer and the governance that comes along with it, where we really needed to change the game and implement some different strategies. So we started this journey, like I said, 18 months, 2 years ago, and I would put it in kind of 2 halves. The first half is the core modernization or the refresh, and that's gone extremely well. We just had our first go live on April 1 in one of our regions. And knock on wood, no major issues to report at this point. We've obviously had a couple things that we uncovered and we're working through. but no major obstacles that are impacting business by any means. We still got to get through month end at the end of April. If we get through that hurdle, I'll feel pretty good about the rest of the journey. We're on a pretty aggressive path on that side of the program. We had our first rollout in April 1. Our next one is scheduled for June 1, and our final is scheduled for July 1st. So we're trying to get through all of this in the next 3 or 4 months, which I'm pretty confident we can do. And the reason for that is we're anxious to get started on the other side of this discussion, which is really getting into the operating model and the business model and leverage some of these advanced technologies to really start to differentiate ourselves and accelerate some of the efficiency gains and other value capture. We're doing a little bit of that in parallel right now. So we have a handful of use cases in certain functions where we are leveraging AI or advanced analytics or advanced technology to try to rethink how we do certain aspects of our business. One example of that is we've introduced a generative AI tool that sits next to our customer service reps that can help them search and find product information much more efficiently. If you think about just the sheer breadth of products we sell, thousands and thousands of products, if a CSR would get a call historically to pull together some product information, maybe some specs, maybe pull a couple of comparable products, and then turn around and get a response to a customer, it could take them hours or days to pull all that information together. Now we've got a search tool where they can type in a question into the search tool, bring back all kinds of information on the products. They can type in another question to pull back comparable products. They can ask this tool to format it so that it's in a response virtually ready to go back to the customer. So you can turn that timeline from hours and days down to minutes or an hour or so to get back to our customer and really improve the experience there. And then we've introduced other AI models, especially around forecasting, trying to improve our purchasing performance and inventory management that also lead to what I would call substantial value when you think about cash flow improvements and working capital improvements. So we've still got a long way to go, but we're pretty intrigued by what we're seeing so far and having some early results and excited to get the core part behind us so we can start having fun with some of the other opportunities.
Love it. Well, go ahead, Delbor.
I was actually going to say love it too. So yes, check, love it. I do have a question. The AI solutions that you mentioned, David, where are they coming from? Are these solutions that you acquired as part of your core system and their upgrade, or is it something that you purchased separately, or is it something that you guys built? Like, how did you get to that functionality?
I would say there's a little bit of both going on, right? Especially when you talk about the core system. Somebody mentioned it earlier. A lot of these modern applications have a lot of that baked in. They're just a lot smarter, a lot more proactive. They can lead the user to where they need to go in order to perform their job versus the user having to wait for a phone call and then going and finding the problem. And so there's a lot of things like that are part of some of the package solutions we purchased. Even in the forecasting space, there's forecasting models and such within the tool, but we built some things on the side to take that to the next step. The customer service, the Gen AI tool, that was built. So obviously, through partnership with Deloitte, we built that as a standalone for now. I suspect a lot of this capability we're building now will move more into the core systems over time. But it's not there yet in all these cases. And if there's enough value there, we felt like, hey, let's go after it and get some early wins and gains. And we can see how that evolves over the coming years.
Thank you.
And David, one last question before Lori, we kind of pivot to you too. But what has surprised you the most about where you guys have been on this journey? Like, is there something that you learned throughout this time where you're like, wow, that wasn't on my bingo card for lessons learned?
I mean, there's probably a couple. Somebody mentioned it earlier, just the change aspect and driving the organization to think differently about some of these opportunities has been huge. the only thing I can tell you is the best way to get there is leadership really needs to be bought in and own the whole journey. The senior leaders have to be vested and understand where we're going and continue to help push and promote. I would say on the build side, I think we've started pretty small with some of these proof of concepts and done a pretty good job of kind of learning as we go and starting small, just to make sure that we're going to be able to achieve the wins that we thought we were. And in some cases, the win may not be as big or substantial, and you've got to make sure you pivot. And then one final thing I would say that's been important for us is how you measure the wins. I mean, we're very transparent with the value we're gaining off of these tool implementations, to the point where my team puts together a monthly performance deck on our financial performance each month. We've got line items in there tied to specific initiatives and how much that initiative is contributing to margin improvements or working capital improvements. So we're very transparent on where we're seeing the value, just to kind of promote what we're talking about and what we're trying to do, and help build the case with the rest of the organization on what we're getting out of it.
I feel like that value piece like cannot be underscored enough, especially in this journey, because being able to communicate what the value this is delivering is so important, especially when you are getting pressure to deliver things faster and more efficiently. Being able to turn that around is huge.
Yeah.
For sure. And you're making substantial investments, right? It's easy if you can't show how much value we're getting. It's easy for people to get tired of that and want to back off or stop. If you can point it out and keep it in front of them, it keeps people vested in why we're doing it, and again, where we're trying to get to.
Yeah.
And David, but I'm also listening. Tell me if I got this right. You are in the process. The program has not completed. You're in the process, and the process will continue with other enhancements. But you already instituted monthly playback of the value and impact. So
Yes.
Is that right? And I think this is wonderful. This is exactly, I think, what everybody that listening to this should take away. Well, two things for me for now. First, the way you got to leveraging agents, Gen AI agents, was the combination of building something that Graybar is investing in specifically, and you've done that in collaboration with Deloitte. So you created your own agent, and then also leveraging technology that already exists in these modern platforms that you're choosing. So the marriage of the two seems to be the recipe you are pursuing, and then instituting monthly value capture and playback, so you can constantly stay on the pulse of this big investment, guys, is returning value now, guys. Let's see how that, I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's only going to become more important. Like I said, we had the core refresh, which again, there's lots of reasons on why you need to do that. And you will go do that every 20 years or so. But the bigger piece is we step into these new business models and operating models and try to get the organization to think differently. If we're not calling out that value prop, it's very difficult to push through that change curve and the pushback we're going to face. And so that's why we stood it up early, especially on some of those operating model initiatives that we started in parallel to the core ERP journey.
Awesome. Well, Lori, as one of my favorite tech fellows, don't tell the others, I would love to know how you are living and breathing this day in and day out too, because I feel like there's so much to this, especially leveraging Gen AI or agents as part of this core modernization journey. So I'd love to just hear a little bit more about you and your journey in this work too.
Thanks, Kelly. So for everybody doesn't know me, as a technology fellow and a chief architect in Deloitte, I am working on modernization projects all of the time. So I work with our government and public sector clients. So I work with large systems that may be 10 years old or maybe 50 years old. Yeah. And I'm sure you can guess some of those. So with all of those different clients, it's remembering that there was a reason they built some of those systems before, right? Going back to our core. This is the core. This is the mission that people are providing and giving services to either citizens and residents or to the rest of the government, for example. As we look at that, I'm excited as an architect for two aspects of AI, two aspects I'm seeing of value, huge value in. One is the way we do our work. Okay, so the way development works and the way we change the way we work to improve it and accelerate it. When we look at the tooling that's being released, things like Copilot and GitHub and things like Amazon Q and all those types of code assist tools that actually improve the way developers are able to work, make a huge difference. That's part of the promise. We look at the reverse engineering of code that exists and the forward engineering of it to things like cloud native. There's a big promise of cloud being saving you money and being elastic and being able to do that. But you've got to understand how to deliver on that architecturally. So that is changing the world. That can change the world from a 5% to a 50% level of effort, an efficiency gain that can move and it will continue to improve. Putting measurements in place, like we mentioned a minute ago, from the beginning, key performance indicators of what you hope you will get out of it, and testing yourself as you adopt pieces is really important. Otherwise, it becomes a giant science experiment, and you can't successfully repeat the results. And that's a key part of leveraging this in the way we work. Now, the other part that I'm really excited about is the way we allow other people to work. So look at your end users of your systems. How can you help them? AI is not about replacing people. AI is about helping people not have to do the things that drive them crazy, the
Yeah.
tedious things that they don't want to have to worry about. The phone calls for a call center that are about the same thing over and over and over. Get that information into people's hands faster through agents, through different AI capabilities. Don't have the people have to do it all the time. Let the people work on the hard things that we haven't solved yet. And one part of this that I want to point out too is as we use AI, it's not magic. What we
Yeah.
have to do is we have to break down the problems we have and the challenges we have. You, I've seen too many people go, well, can't you just automate that whole thing? Well, okay, maybe, but we've had a saying in the tech industry for a long time: you can't automate what you don't understand. It's the
Yeah.
same with AI. So as we break down the problems into pieces and can put them together into a series of fit solutions or solutions that fit the problem that you're solving, then we get that true power. And that's what I've seen with so many clients. Again, we take things like code assist tools. We can have it explain the code that exists and then help us explain how to make the changes. That transition of getting help from the tools now cuts down the development time. And that translates to money.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure David knows that better than most. That translates to that reduction in cost for maintaining your systems and refreshing them. And now you can start making it a habit, right? Now let's look at the habit. We don't have to go back and refresh. So you mentioned, David, that we refresh about every 20 years. My goal would be that we are constantly refreshing and we don't have to do it in a 20-year cycle, that we can take advantage of improving the habits we have and leveraging the AI we have to make that a constantly freshening cycle. We go back to tech wellness versus tech debt.
Yeah.
We don't ever get into debt because we're constantly getting into tech wellness. We're constantly improving our wellness. And that's one of the most exciting things to me. Now, the hard part, you talk about lessons learned.
Yeah.
People are the slowest to change. Helping people get this vision and helping them see how it will help their lives improve, that's where we need to spend the effort, right? That's where we need to spend the time as we figure out which tool to use and where to use it, and then introduce it into our teams in a way that they can use it. It makes their lives easier. Make that the path of least resistance, and they will make those changes. It takes that effort, and it takes a lot of thinking about how to introduce it, not just about implementing it.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
lighting up the behavioral science on your organization, supported by, enabled by AI at the adjacency, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's also important to understand that at the end of the day, humans are at the center of all of this. And,
Yep.
humans have another element that hasn't been perfected within the AI, and that's emotional element. That drives a lot of behavior and the ultimately the outcomes that AI can create. I mean, I go around and tell people, like, for thousands of years, humans figured out how to trust each other. Even if they make a mistake, they go for a dinner and they forget about that mistake and move on, and they reverse some of those mistakes systematically in the core or any other system. But ultimately, we trust each other. Like, us trusting machines hasn't been established, neither in the outcomes, neither in the results, nor in any other category of commitments that we expect human to give by leveraging machines. I mean, think about it. You ask a developer to estimate an activity, and they say this particular activity takes 100 hours. And you bring in some of these code assists or software development lifecycle assists and say now that code development should take 50% of the time. Like, figuring out what to do with the other 50% of your availability now, it's something that we haven't planned for it yet, and haven't figured out what do we expect that person to do. So, like, bringing all these elements, take advantage of all these benefits in time reduction, then you have to go back into the methodology and reimagine the methodology of how do you actually sequence things together, that those dependencies are preserved, those outcomes are protected, and humans actually can collectively do, things faster than before in a collective string of, activities, not just individual tasks. And that's one of the big things that is hitting the, like, intelligent core creation beside all the other things. And one more challenge that I've seen many clients are going through is when they were creating those system of records in their cores, as David also mentioned, they actually created systems of records. So why is this a problem? Well, when it comes to AI is driven by what you feed to the AI. If I have 5 systems of records, which one is the source of truth? Which one is the one that actually gives you the accelerations and benefits and everything else? And now that is forcing a lot of organizations to take a step back and not just modernize the core, but also think about all the governance and principles that they need to apply to the core, that no longer different divisions and different departments can have their own data attributes. All of a sudden, data has become the new currency for the enterprise. And as a result, you have to apply some, much better restrictions and much tighter restrictions on the data, because that data is going to flow through these agents, multi-agent systems, individual agents or others, but it has to deal with single set of record, not multiple set of records. And that adds to the complications of how do you intellify your core, right? So.
And is there a choice point around how much data do we expose to AI too as part of that decisioning?
Well, AI is becoming more powerful by
Yeah.
the day, like, and as these language models are coming out, and I mean, there are 2 things that feeds AI, it's the data, and you need computing to process that amount of data. So, the computing is opening up. If you hear a lot of, like, hardware providers and innovators are thinking about how do you actually process a lot more data with a lot less cost with a faster speed. And that's the objective of NVIDIA's of the world and other chip makers. Therefore, organizations are realizing the more data they feed to AI, one, they get better answers. 2, they get more in-depth insights and foresights, right? AI can do 2 things for you. One, execute autonomous tasks, which is the automation at a different grade. Second thing, it can help you do problem solving. And problem solving is when you unlock things. And for you to do problem solving, you need quantitative data and you need qualitative data. And qualitative data is the one that actually makes sense out of quantitative data to say, if you get to a certain set of records, you need to make a decision different than any other decisions you would have made. So thinking about all these, like kind of wonderful capabilities that AI is unlocking, then you need a lot more data. And finding that data in the organization is becoming a big opportunity for a lot of organizations. A lot of startups are actually going purely after data discovery, data modernization, data acceleration, anything around data, because they realize if you sort out the data issues, then you can take advantage of AI. If you don't, you're still back to square one where you cannot trust AI, right? So,
Yeah, trust trumps tech in this scenario. And if you don't have that foundation in place, you're not going to be able to get value off of it.
To me, and as I'm listening, of course, the engine is working. There are three opportunities that I think are really massive in front of us. You said system of records, actually systems of records, where you need to figure out what is the source of truth. And many organizations do have them. But Lori mentioned the self-healing of systems that we are on a path to land at. Imagine that scenario. So to me, the first opportunity here is to leverage AI to create and operate your self-healing systems that are the systems of record that you're using. So self-healing. The second opportunity to me is to use the layer of AI to actually contextualize what all of these systems of record are actually telling you about your business. So there is a opportunity for the self-healing of systems. There's an opportunity to contextualize what's actually happening in the business with a layer on top of all the systems. And to me, the third one is, but maybe huge one, is to get to the point where you can actually modernize systems automagically, right? So that you can actually light up a program of work to modernize those systems that will be done order of magnitude more efficient, more effective, more easier, right? To me, those are the three big, huge things that jump out of this conversation. And Lori, I love what you said about both reverse engineering. That is superbly important because we all know like the huge organizations still run on COBOL mainframe systems where there's no documentation. People have retired, right? What do you do with this, right? So reverse engineering the code, and then you said forward engineering the code, bringing both of these together and actually solving the whole coding question, I think is going to be massively advancing us to this future where you can do the self-healing of systems, introduce the layer on top for context, and then hopefully modernize your core automatically at some point in the future, right?
Yeah, one other comment, Dalibor, about something Lori said real quick here. And first, Lori, I hope you're right. I'm ready for this modernization to take place automatically. If I don't have to go through another one in my lifetime, I'll be ecstatic. I feel like they take years off your life every time you do them. But hey, one other comment that I picked up on Lori when she was talking is in something we're starting to think about as we set down kind of the core refresh and think forward about further expanding our use of AI and advanced technologies is just the governance around what you go and work on down the road. It is so easy. There's so many tools. There's so many use cases that are flying around everywhere. And as Lori said, some groups said, hey, come automate this away. And it's like, why? What's the value prop on that particular use case versus something over here? So I think having an organization and a governance model where you're very strategic on how you're deploying it and where to make sure you're getting that value are important. And I think Lori's point was valid. You need to focus on that problem, not just the technology, which is kind of an age-old problem we've had in the technology space for years.
Yeah, it's really leading with need and not doing tech for tech's sake, because I think that's where people have gone. It's easy to go amiss very quickly if you're saying, let's do Gen AI to do Gen AI. Like, what are the problems we're solving? And then let's think through how do we want to go about solving them, knowing that there are a few choice points too, especially as we think through, should we be building some of these in-house, David, like you mentioned, or are we partnering with others? What third-party vendors should we connect with on this?
David, I have a very good feeling that this was the last core modernization or transformation that you went through. And here's my reason, for all the decades when we talked about core and core modernization, all of our focus was around structured data and putting discipline around that, right? Which basically, in a deterministic system, business processes and those disciplines, what makes the systems run. In a probabilistic world, which is the direction we're heading, the reliance becomes more on unstructured data. And structured data will become, a component that we can tap into using all these wonderful technologies. So I think the system of records will become, at some capacity, something that has to be there, and they will move around. But reliance on, activating unstructured data, which up until today was handled by humans, by the way. Not a lot of organizations created content management systems or felt like any kind of discipline around, like unstructured data was critical, because we created these structured systems in the core. Then humans handled the relevancy of unstructured and structured data. But now all of a sudden we're realizing, wait a minute, AI actually brings that whole power through connecting the two together. And focus will shift to unstructured data and tapping into the advantages of that. So I have a very good feeling this was the last one. I could be wrong, but I have a very good feeling this was the last one.
Wouldn't that be something? Now, if you think about Abdi, what you just said, I am 100% behind you. People tend to forget that SaaS model, software as a service model, we already live. Well, obviously, we've been living in that model for the last 10 years at least, if more, not more. That model has removed the need for every organization to have upgrades of their software on premise every time, right? People forget how much effort that has saved us all, right?
Yeah.
So to me, the next stage in the evolution of this is now we are leveraging ERP solutions that are on cloud. We are subscribing to services, and we are expecting the provider to modernize, keep it safe, keep it updated, and so on and so forth. I think that AI should be able to help us perhaps do something similar for our customizations, which is what is tying us down. So the moment that is solved, I think that will be the moment where we actually come to this moment where you say, no, now we are in a self-healing world. We can call it self, right?
Yeah, and like I think, like when I, told David there's no big, movements like, transformation, big giant activity called transformation. It's going to be replaced by a series of business process reimagination activities. And you come to the realization that the processes that you build over the years, however many steps they had, now you have the opportunity to tap into the power of AI and reimagine the entire thing. And I use a simple example. For years, we built in the, like sales departments, invoice processing solutions. Now back to what Lori said, like now we have an opportunity to reimagine invoice management by not going after modernizing invoice processing. But think about invoice management by implementing a solution that handles invoice exception handling and error processing. Those are two different designs. One heavily depends on human, the other one heavily depends on AI. And the reimagination of how the invoice management can be designed that way will be a revolution on how much time it takes and how much cost it takes to process per invoice. Take that and multiply that by every back office or front office or middle office solution and activity. All of a sudden, you have a much leaner organization and much more effective organization that can process things faster and accommodate a lot more. And that's what businesses want. Give me flexibility with the IT and systems so I can expand and contract the way the business needs to go, right? So
You have mentioned, I love this. You have mentioned rightly so the aspect of people and change and emotions. And I think this is superbly important. And one organizations that figure out, I think the following equation are going to win. So imagine an organization where all the employees, workers are encouraged and rewarded and protected, like psychological safety, and then encouraged to say, look, here are the tools. Go and figure out how you can extract 60% of what your daily routine, and just like automate it to the point, not automate, like using AI to do it instead. Imagine the power of having an organization that has 10,000 employees, encouraged that every one of those 10,000 employees actually discovers and figures out and experiments and has the encouragement and power to knock on the boss's door and say, hey boss, I figured out a way to remove 60% of my day-to-day tasks, and not worry about losing the job, but actually being rewarded for that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
To me, that is the next frontier. How do we actually remove the real concern and rock and fuel innovation by putting it in the hands of people who actually do the work?
I have one thing on that exactly. We worry too much as humans. We worry too much about losing what we've got today. To be honest, what we've got today, there's a lot of tedium in it. I want to lose all of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are so many problems in the world that need to be solved. If we have 60% more time, we will solve them.
Yes, I agree.
Think about cancer and global warming and world hunger. I'm saying that if we had all our brains being able to take 60% of our time to solve more problems,
Yeah.
we can start to touch those things.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's where we need to kind of be able to see that as the future instead of what we're giving up. Think about what more can we accomplish
I love it.
as our cultures and our societies and even our companies, what more products could we deliver to our users? There's so much more we could do if we can free ourselves from the repetitive tasks that we can hand off to the robots that aren't going to complain because they don't have those emotions. That's where I see the power.
I describe myself as a techno optimist. You are describing this exact. So I believe that what we are, I believe, on the brink. If we pull this off right, we are on the brink of abundance. We can create abundance for all, right?
Yes.
And I think that this is the mindset. You are absolutely right, Lori. I love it. This is the mindset. Don't think about what you're losing, because you are losing an anchor. You are losing, and cut it off. Cut it off.
Yeah.
Right? But people need to be encouraged, and it has to be safe.
Yeah.
So you cannot cut off and then be fired next month, or
cut
off and be fired in 6 months. You need to be cut off and realize, oh my God, I am now actually free to move, and I'm encouraged, and it's safe, and I am recognized for this, and I am elevating and being, I'm happier and more productive. Like, that has to be the way to solve for this, I think.
Yeah, and Lori's spot on, and I connect what she said to what David said at the beginning about technical debt. For decades back to the core systems, we actually increased technical debt to accommodate the business. That was the limitation of systems that we dealt with. Now the rewarding part, back to Lori's point, is reduce the technical debt so you can focus on more strategic activities. And that should be a core part of business case. Like, how do you actually reduce technical debt? Because that brings more standards, that brings simplicity and everything else with it, which allows you to tap into the power of AI, right? So
And I also
And
think
that's
you as leaders have the opportunity to walk the walk and talk the talk, right? So opening that conversation around here's how I'm reframing some of my role, or hey, let's do a Gen AI competition where we all kind of think through how can we evolve our role. Dalbor, to your point, not to get rid of roles, but to really find ways to automate so that you can augment the what you're working on and do it for those higher order tasks, higher order problems we're solving, not that administrivia that we all loathe day in and day out.
Fantastic.
And that's
Thank
where
you.
I think it's critical. And I mentioned this up front that leadership needs to own it. It's that part of the journey which is leading by example, but also talking to your team about, hey, we're going to go free up 50% of your capacity, but it's not to eliminate 50% of the roles. It's because we want you to go focus on this versus that. And having that part of the story up front, I think makes people a little bit more comfortable going after that and doing it. If you don't have that piece, then it becomes people are still reluctant. They don't know what's going to happen. And so you've got to tell that whole story, I think, up front in order to get some movement in that direction.
Yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, I think this was a wonderful conversation. I would love to give you all a chance to provide maybe a call for action or key message that you would like to communicate to the audiences here. So maybe we'll start with Lori, then we go with Abdi, then David, you, and we can wrap up with you, Kelly. So Lori, out of all this discussion, any sort of conclusions, action steps, lessons learned, final messages?
Yeah. So my final message is look at what you've got, break down the things you do into small chunks and start automating them. Use AI and use the promise because you'll have your time to then be more creative. And then we'll start solving and expanding and creating what you said, the abundance of for all of us.
The age of abundance. Thank you very much, Lori, for that. Abdi, over to you.
Sure. My statement is change is the new constant and agility is what matters more than ever before. If you think about how fast the technology is changing, we're just getting into the cycle that every 3 months something new is coming out, and it's going to be even sooner than that. So embracing change as a part of the culture, it must be like something that a lot of organizations will benefit from. And again, agility, like we have built processes and things that was just it's too much structure, too much governance, too much discipline. We can simplify those things, and that's what you gain agility. So I think embracing the change as a new constant and increasing your agility will benefit you more than anything else.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Abdi, for that. David.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, I think Lori hit on a couple of my key learnings and lessons. I mean, really try to focus on strategic use cases for you and get started. I mean, pick a partner. There's ways to start relatively small and produce some proof of concepts and show value. And then you gain traction and continue to move along and move the organization in the right direction. And you don't necessarily have to wait until you refresh the core, although before you get too broad, you're gonna have to make sure that core is in good shape for you to take full advantage. So again, thanks for that conversation. Really enjoyed the dialogue, and it's been a fun hour.
Thank you very much, David. Kelly, over to you to wrap us up.
Well, I think this is truly a journey and not a destination, right? So I think giving yourself grace to be that learner, to partner with people, to ask the tough questions. I think there's not a day where we're all going to be the smartest human or we're going to have everything solved. So I think giving ourselves that permission to be that learner, to collaborate, to challenge status quo, to ask the questions that no one else is, I think is really my guidance and something that I try and aspire to daily too. So really grateful for the time here. And thank you, Dalbor, for continuing to entrust us as part of this series. Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you all very much. It was delightful.
Thank you.
I mentioned, I realized I said Wednesday, but it's Tuesday actually in the opening. So Tuesday, April 15th. In a couple of hours, this will be available on YouTube on our TechTonic Conversations. Thank you all very much, and I wish you a lovely Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.